Madam Chair. Yeah, please be kind. So I'm bringing this item because of what seems to have been some confusion about these 124 projects. The criteria have shifted over time. There's been, sometimes they've been recommended, other times certain projects were recommended, no longer recommended, and it's been left open-ended, the time frame for concluding the negotiations and getting to a contract. And there are certain challenges in these contracts because a very high standard has been set for what is expected from these applicants. So the last time we discussed these at the Board of County Commission meeting, I asked the mayor, would he be amenable to setting a date certain? And he indicated that he would be for the completion of negotiations so that we as a body know where we stand with these funds and they are not left open endlessly. And we can get to a point where if certain dollars that have been initially allocated cannot lead to a final contract, that we are able to recapture those dollars for reconsideration. So that's the intent of this resolution. It is in two parts. The first part is that there be a date certain for the completion of the negotiations, after which the mayor would make a report, after which it would come to the Board of County Commissioners for, to the committee and the Board of County Commissioners for final approval of the contracts. The second portion is to hold in abeyance or put a moratorium on additional projects which may or may not be in the process right now. So I'd just like to ask that those two items be considered, perhaps separately. But again, the dates, there's nothing magical about the date except to try to get the certainty before the recess of the Board of County Commissioners so that immediately after recess, the board could vote on the projects that have been negotiated effectively, and then we could move forward. And at the same time, we could recapture and move forward with any reallocation. Separately, I will be working on some proposals to frame any recaptured funds, priorities for those. But right now, we're just dealing with the matter of how to make sure that these projects don't languish and that we have a date certain for the negotiation. I've had an opportunity to speak to Mr. Solomon about this. I don't want to put words in his mouth. Maybe we could invite him down to speak to...
You can recognize him.
If Lee Solomon would come down and let us know what, as far as the timeline, how this impacts on your process, please. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Commissioners. Commissioner Cava, as we discussed yesterday, I have no problem with the amendment and presenting the report. The item, we will do our best to get as many of the grant agreements that we presently have negotiated, signed by the grantees, and that will be our report to the board on the 16th of July 16th, or whatever it is.
Yeah, 14th.
Right, and then they'll be presented to the board at that time, and they'll go to committee, and then they'll go to the full board, I guess, in October. Be September and October timeframe, I guess.
Great. Thank you very much. So again, the intent here is to take advantage of this opportunity granted to us by the voters and to make sure that these projects don't languish and that we can move forward to actually get the dollars at work in the community where they can benefit us.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
And I would like to move this item.
Okay. Okay, any further discussion? Okay. Oh, okay, I'll second it for discussion only.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. Am I recognized?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to. Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. Am I mistaken? Does Commissioner Sosa have an item that requires the rest of this money to go through a process? Because I'm trying to understand.
It didn't pass.
We never really had a process, and then this just kind of morphed into like a kind of a free for all. I don't know. There's a better word. Maybe that's not a fair, description. But it just seemed like everybody's now rushing to get these things in here, and I'm trying to understand what's the process moving forward. So we had a policy, and then the dam burst on that policy, and then it's like there's a rush now for all these projects. We had a couple of folks speak about not wanting to put a moratorium on anymore because they're already in the process. So where and Jack, if you can help me, I mean, with regards to where the mayor's at on this, I mean, you know, what's the orderly fashion to move forward? Are we going to kind of whoever is it a first come first serve kind of scenario, or?
I hope not.
Well, I mean, well, listen, it's what it's become. I mean, and we're not doing anything to stop it. So you know,
well, I think the variable that will stop it is the fact that we have at this point made preliminary commitments for all the money except for a $7.5 million. So you know, people have talked about 3 or 4 projects that are in the middle. Those projects, at best, would come for around 2 of this process. In fact,
so we've given out 60.
We haven't given out
anything. Well, we've committed to, I guess, or the board has committed.
We have your actions have put some money behind some projects so that we can start the second phase of contracts.
What's the total of that? I mean, do you?
It was $75 million.
Yeah, $75 million
was the total
in one
pot?
item and 15 in the TUA. So it's a total of
in that
124.
In the 124.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with the other program. The other program had a kind of policy in the targeted area. So
yeah.
So I understand that objective, but the other one was a much broader program. So those from the 75, we have most of it. And Commissioner Cava, your item would put a stop to that, or
again, there's 2 parts of the resolution. The first part would be to set the dates certain. The second part would put a moratorium on anything else that might be in the hopper and would come back after July 14th.
Okay, so Jack, are you guys supportive of putting a stop on it until we kind of catch our breath here and maybe see how we move forward with the rest of the money?
We're supportive of getting through this process with contracts, which is going to be very difficult. We've already had some initial conversations with people. We've got some standards for the contracts themselves. And one of the first conversations we had was with a potential person who said, well, yeah, I know that we said we were going to have 570 jobs, but we really only want to have 200 jobs. Well, you know,
I'm not surprised, Jack.
I'm not.
I could have told you that
either.
Was going to happen.
And that's my point. You know, this process is not going to be one that's easy. Okay. And you know, we're in a situation where we're not going to This is not negotiation. We're not saying, oh, well, okay, well, 200. Would you put 350 in? You know, that's not going to be what you voted. What you agreed to was 570, whatever it is, jobs, and that's where it's going to be. And if it's not that, then from my perspective, it goes back in the pot.
Fair enough, and good to hear. So then this process would then, you know, kind of set that that will give you a timeline from when these negotiations need to be wrapped up.
That's right, and I think that maybe, you know, I guess the worst that could happen is none of them clear, and the best is most of them will clear. We'll know all that by the middle part of the summer. But right now today, what I think that you and I both had fear of is happening, which is, well, yeah, I know, but things have kind of changed, and our projects have kind of changed, and that's just not going to work for us.
Okay, well, I'm glad to hear that. So moving forward, the mayor, I mean, does he envision a certain prioritizing now the fact that we have very little money allocated?
Well, I think that when we come back to a second round, we'll take. I know that you think.
When you mean a second round, so I understand, the second round is if some of these monies don't go through, some of these projects don't go through, the money gets basically, we're reprogramming the dollars. That's what you're talking about when you say the second round?
Yes.
Okay.
So at that point, then I think that we would sit down with the number of projects that we've got and the amount of money that we've got, and we would start to talk about the same thing the way we did it this way the last time, which I know that you think there wasn't a process, but there was, and that is, we don't think that's the kind of project that we want to have for this kind of process. We'd say yes or no. We'd bring them back to you as we did the last time with some criteria in them. And we go through this process and, you know, good Lord willing, this will come to an end someday.
Well, I didn't say there wasn't a process. I know there was an application. The process was not the process that the commission had laid out. And there was a policy in place. Well, that policy was ignored to a certain degree, and there was another process created parallel to the policy that existed in the commission.
And in each
Which
one
is
of
why you had to basically come back and ask for a waiver of that policy. So
That's correct.
So I let's be clear about it, and that's fine. Listen, that's it's behind us. So let's look moving forward. What's the best thing to do? And I want to understand. So the money that we have left, the limited money we have left, is there a certain priority that the mayor is looking at with regards to how to allocate those resources, or are we still on a first come first served basis?
I think that we are still dealing with projects that meet the criteria of what was in the original bond issue, which is its public infrastructure, and that it has some kind of game change, it'd be significant, and that we're looking for projects that create jobs. So that's still the process. You know, we'll sort these things out. It's very difficult to have a hard set of criteria when the projects range the full range of the universe of what things are. You can say, I only want to have projects in downtown, or I only want to have projects that have parking garages. But what we've tried to do is leave it open enough so people can use some creativity. That's up to us and ultimately to you to make some choices. And some of them are tough choices about which is the best way to go. But for this conversation, you ask if do we have any criteria? I think the criteria is the availability of the money that's left there. Articulate. Somebody said something about 4 more projects. I know one of those projects is a $10 million proposal. We don't have that kind of money this time around. It's going to definitely have to go in the second round, like it or not.
Okay. So I kind of, smiled here because the word game changer doesn't have the same meaning it used to have after all this back and forth with the definition of game changer. Let me ask you, has the administration taken a look at the geographic distribution of these funds, and in particular about how it's being distributed between projects within municipalities and projects outside in the UMSA area?
We have done that off and on from the time this began.
Do you know what the breakdown is?
As I sit here right now, Commissioner, I don't remember give you the details of that.
Is it 12 projects that we have as of right now?
Maybe
we granted 12 projects. Is it 12?
But we were not in a situation where we were going to go out and search for projects in an area.
Yeah, I understand, and this is an issue I brought to a lot of to deputy mayors and to department heads, that there is a lack on behalf of the administration with trying to create equity between municipalities and the unincorporated area. The unincorporated area, which my district's 100% unincorporated, and it's 100% surrounded by unincorporated areas, is 43% of this county. And for whatever reason, it seems that area always gets the short end of the stick. And if I'm not mistaken, if there's 12 projects, I believe 10 of them were in municipalities and 2 of them are in the unincorporated areas.